May of the plague. Hello, friends. What you're looking at is the coronavirus. I take a long walk every morning in Corona Park and I look at the virus, which is a rusty remain of the 1964-1965 World's Fair. I look, I walk 3 times around it, and I watch it rusting. My hope is that one day it will collapse. Hopefully, I won't be under it. Next to it is the hopeful point of the people who lived then in the mid 20th century, a time capsule. It reads, "The time capsules deposited September 23, 1938 and October 1965 by the Westinghouse Electric Company as a record of 20th century civilization to endure for 5,000 years. 5,000 years. Well, that is hope. It is an amazing chutzpah, hubris, and hope. All things that start at age. I hope the time capsule was visible. I hope that the advance of civilization words were on tape. I hope that the idea that someone will open this in 5,000 years and see what 20th civilization was like was sort of chillingly charming in its own way. And what does this futuristic virus and flying saucers mean in the rusty space? They mean that here are the remains of 20th century grand aspirations, and they're rusting quietly, probably because they couldn't be moved. I mean, there's some hope in the idea that aspiration cannot be moved. It can be forgotten, like this place was, or unattended, but it cannot be moved. That's very comforting. If the present fails us entirely, we can always resort to aspiration. Why? Because we live on a Unisphere. This is the Unisphere, another 1965-66 World's Fair, leftover in Queens. In the summer, it sometimes moves. There's a water basin around it, but it is the world. Every time I see it, I think, water. All that stuff that is not solid is water. So we are islands floating on water. And when Earth was Pangea, that's a lawnmower. When Earth was Pangea, all of those things were together. But since then, they have drifted apart, and no doubt they continue to drifting. This work is quite extraordinary. I also go around it 3 times in the hopes of healing the plague. Personal superstitions, which we all have. I have some other ones. And it makes for, for experiencing the eliciting other people's nostalgia. Several people have told me that the World's Fair was the high point of a certain time in their childhood or their youth, and their parents took them to see the rides and the wonders. At that World Fair in the 60s, the World's Fair Association, which was in Paris at the time, an entity that certified world fairs, did not give this fair approval. And so the tyrannical, dictatorial reviled and worshipped Robert Moses, the architect of New York, decided that he would create this park from the swamp and go ahead and ask industry to advertise and to make the wonders of their production the center of a world fair that shows American productivity, industry, and ingenuity. There's also an imperialist idea, but industry came through, like Westinghouse and all the rest of them. And they made quite wonderful things, rides that people remember. Countries sent exhibits here without any approval from Paris. Uh, Italy displayed the Pietà for the first time it had been seen in many years. It was an enormous success. Children loved it. They remember the songs and the Bulgarian and Mongolian troops that sang, and all sorts of Sputnik-y mid-60s, we are going to the moon marvels. It was a Godard who perfected the handheld camera technique that I am using now with such skill. And I am going to read you one of the inscriptions now on this great monument. And here it is. It says, dedicated to Unisphere, dedicated to man's aspirations toward peace through mutual understanding and symbolizing his achievements in an expanding universe. Built and presented by United States Steel Corporation, 1964-65, New York World's Fair, April 22, 1964. Made of stainless steel, the Unisphere is 40 feet high, 120 feet in diameter, and weighs 700,000 pounds. 700,000 pounds of steel. What is interesting now about this particular dedication is that it is dedicated to man's aspiration. I don't see any. I know man is generic, or was generic for men, women, and humans, but it is still something probably not stressed today. The achievements of this man in an expanding universe sounds good, and it's probably accurate. How the universe is expanding, for better or worse, we don't know. I don't know. I think this meant something optimistic. You can see peace is capitalized, which was probably Soviet insistence then that peace was capitalized, because the Soviet Union certainly pushed that idea of peace, rightly so, but also for reasons that were political and adversarial to the United States. But on the other hand, peace seemed to be a word that was not far from the lips of any politician. And understanding is a very good word, and that's very far from the lips of politicians now. Man has sort of become a secondary utility. Women have stayed with their well. Human beings would have served them better. Our aspirations have become somewhat of the past, nostalgic, and there are many things wrong with that inscription. And just for your edification, here it is again, for the edification of the walkers and joggers who are here in the summer. The drops you see are rain, so very soon It is going to rain, so walking in the rain without the umbrellas of Cherbourg is one of my great pleasures. This is the Queen's Museum, the tour guide said. Two weeks ago, it was a field hospital. They put up white tents in front of it, and it was full of COVID patients who seemed to have either been healed or died. There are a number of sinister-looking trucks behind the Queen's Museum, and you'll never suspect the sort of terror and steamy fear and pain that was rising here. Not what is 2 weeks ago, but in the new ideas of time, it shouldn't be called time. 2 weeks are eternities or eons or globular rolls of the biofilm